Hello. How is everyone doing? Hey, how's it going? We're live here now, and I thought I'd just come on and have a little fun with some cameras that I have. I haven't done it in a while. Just want to share the link out here before I get started. If I can figure out how to do that. Oh man, should have done that before. Oh well, there we go. Yeah. Okay. So, I want to talk a little bit about Pentax cameras. That's what the stream's about. And, just for fun, I have a ton of Pentax cameras. Nobody really talks about Pentax. They're always like Nikon, Canon. That's just the way it is. Uh, they put way more money into marketing, but if people knew how good Pentax was, they might give it a try. It's really dependent. Unfortunately, you're always going to have opinions. It's sort of like cars. Everyone has their favorite make of car, but you know, it is what it is. So, uh, nobody's in here yet. That's funny. Oh well. Just gonna talk into the air because I want to talk about Pentax cameras. Going live, talking about Pentax cameras for fun. Come watch. Putting it out on Twitter. All right. We're going live. Alrighty. Okay. So let's talk about Pentax cameras and why I like them so much. Well, Pentax are an extremely versatile line of. They always say that, hey, you can use. Uh, oh, I had an unstable connection there for a second. So they always say that you can use any of their lenses from their entire line, which is true. You can. Uh, which is one of the major benefits of it. So if you're a big lens guy, which is really what makes the biggest importance in digital cameras, uh, they can make all the difference in the world. Now, just 1 second here. So let's talk. Going back into the film days, they started with a screw mount lens. That was kind of their their starting point. So this is the Pentax S1A film SLR camera. It is a screw mount, which means instead of the bayonets that you have today, the lens screws on. This was pretty common back in the days. This would have been, I think, around the 1960s or so. This camera came out. I was just checking here. Yeah, 1963 to 67. So this is when they started, and this is when they started with the interchangeable lenses on the SLRs in around the 60s, 50s. It was around that time period. So this was an interesting one. These things are built like tanks, which is why this thing still exists in working condition today. Now the shutter is a bit sticky, which is why I don't really use this one anymore per se. It's yeah, it's an okay camera, but it's seen kind of its day. So I've kind of retired it to a shelf camera now, so it sits on the shelf in my living room. Um, you know, it's got a weird hatch release instead of the typical pull release that's up here on some of the newer film cameras or more modern film cameras, I guess. And of course, you load the film in the back, just like any other film camera. It's got really low shutter speeds. It only goes up to 5/500th of a second, which is fairly low by today's standards. Some of them can go up to, oh god, 5,000ths of a second, so 10 times the amount of speed that you can get on the shutters now, which makes really good for action photography and stuff like that. So that's where they started, the screw mount lenses. Now, when they say that you can use any Pentax lens on any modern camera, they're not kidding. So I'm going to get into my digitals later, but this is my K01. This is what I primarily shoot most of my video on still today. It's not the newest or greatest thing, and for some reason I jammed this lens cap in there. Not that it really matters, but anyway, okay. So I'll leave the lens cap on for right now. And what I have mounted on here is a 28 millimeter screw mount lens. So it's not what I normally use to shoot with per se, but I decided, I'll stick it on there and I'll, just for the fun of it. I have shot with this before with video. It's just I bought a few autofocus lenses, so I switched back to them. But now I'm switching back to this one for this camera because I got another digital camera now. It's a little bit better, so I'll probably use that one for most of my filming. So I've got my really nice lens on that. Anyway, moving on. This is the rugged old beast. This is a K1000. These things were around for almost 20 years on the market. I have no idea when this one was manufactured. It could have been sometime between the 1970s and the 1980s. They were around for about a decade, if not, about 15 years, I'd say. Anyway, sorry, had to take a drink. So these were real rugged things. Now I've got film loaded in this one, so I'm not gonna open it up, expose the film. I'll only get about 10 shots in on it. But it had a little bit more versatility. It went up to 1,000th of a second, and that was the major difference between models. You could get them a little bit higher, a little bit lower, depending on when the Pentax K1000 was made. But its shutter speed was really the draw with this one, and it introduced the bayonet mount, which is called the K mount, which is still what Pentax uses today on all of its modern SLR cameras, and one mirrorless, as I'll show you. But yeah, so it became the norm, and this, with the screw mount adapter, allows you to use any of their SLR lenses on any SLR they've ever made, which is wonderful. So yeah, and you see how much easier that is than unscrewing it. But once again, these things were built to last. These were workhorses. These are solid cameras. They never die. Very, very rarely do they die. It would be hard to kill one of these things. You'd really have to toast it. This one isn't in the best shape, but it still works fairly well. The shutter, again, is a little sticky. That's where most of these things break down over time, is in the shutter mechanisms, because the gears start wearing out. The oil starts going on them and things like that. But hey, they work. As long as they work, you can keep them going. Now, this one's in the same family. This is the KX. And this is what I mostly use for a film camera to shoot with my Pentax cameras anyway. I've got other film cameras that I like using more, like my Nikon and stuff like that. Again, built like a tank. This body's a little slightly bigger. It was made around probably the same time as the K1000. Goes up to 1,000th of a shutter. It's got a few more ISO options on it, which means it's a little bit more modern. This one has this cool little window up here, which when you look through the prism, or the viewfinder in the prism, it shines down onto the aperture settings, so you can read it through the viewfinder, which is a nice touch, really. It was very helpful. I got a 40 to 80 millimeter Pentax lens loaded on here. An f2.8, a really nice lens in its day. It's a little wonky, but using it on a digital camera, and that could just be because the focus is a little out on it. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it's a nice lens. It's a different lens. It's got a macro functionality on it, which means it's got like a 1 to 2 times macro function, and that just means you can get a little bit closer up to an object and put it in focus than you normally could. That's all that macro means. Macro typically, or micro, as some of the companies call it, is for doing like super close up stuff. So if I'm down here right next to an object, well, if I've got a decent enough macro lens on it, or micro lens, as Nikon likes to call them, I can take a really decent close up picture. That's how you see pictures of insects and things like that. This one just had a snap in feature that get you a little bit more close up focus on it. It's not a true macro lens. True macro lenses are usually prime lenses, which means they don't have a zoom on them. They are a single focal length. Let's put that down there. Now I can get into what I really wanted to talk about was digital cameras. I just wanted to show off a couple film cameras, show that you could, show off a couple film cameras, show that you could, in fact, all the lenses, put them onto the modern ones, which I'll definitely show you with some of the bayonet ones for sure. Sorry, a little dry in here, so I got to take a drink. Some people that irks, but anyway, moving into the digital frame, what I showed you before was the K01. This is a totally unique camera that Pentax put out years ago. I think it was 2013 when they put this out. It is a APS-C sized mirrorless camera, which is pretty common now. But back in 2013, people were putting out things like Micro Four Thirds, which has a smaller sensor. They were doing a few APS-C size things, but they were a little expensive, and they were doing some full frames. They were kind of jumping into. But the difference is all of these things took different lenses on them. They were a different lens system. And Pentax came in and said, well, why don't we make an APS-C size camera and use our regular K-mount on it? That way it'll use all of our lenses and, people can jump into this mirrorless system. Now, where they kind of faltered with this one at the time was getting this designer to do the camera body design, and he came out with this boxy looking thing. Now, again, this is common now with mirrorless cameras to have this sort of boxy, sort of retro look to them. But at the time, everyone criticized it, and it didn't really make a whole lot of sense because this thing used one of the best APS-C size sensors they had, and which was the one that they used on the what they call their K5, which would have been their top of the line SLR at the time. And when I turn this thing on, it's in aperture mode, so it's going to ask me. The lighting's a little bad in here. It's going to ask me what focal length the lens is. This is a 28 mil. It's already set, so I can just hit enter, and then I get all my readouts on the back here. So, that's all there was to it. Right now, it's in movie mode. So, and normally what I do is I've got a viewfinder attachment that goes on the back here, so I can look through it like a regular camera. But I took that off right now because it's a little bulky when you put it in the bag. Makes it about this much longer. So there's that. So yeah, like I said, I've got one of the screw mount lenses. Okay. From the old Pentax series on here. And it works perfectly fine. And they designed it like that so that you could use any lens. And all you need is a little metal ring adapter, which is just literally a metal ring that adapts the bayonet. onto the bayonet so you can screw the lens into, I should say. That little piece of metal though costs like $75 because it's, engineered by them. They charge a premium rate for it, but it's damn well worth it because you can go to the flea market and find these screw mount lenses lying everywhere, and people don't know what they're for and they charge nothing for them, but they're amazingly excellent lenses. Like some of the best glass ever made. So you can't really go wrong with it. Anyway, I'm going to snap that cap back on, even though it was on there super tight, because I don't want to scratch my lens, even though there's a filter on it. All right, let's put that down there and move on to another thing. Oh, before I do that, this is another screw mount lens that I have, which is a 135, one of their original 135s. It's just a nice sort of telephoto lens if you want to do up close portraits, and you can kind of see how it's reflecting my ring light there, and how nice of an optical effect that can give. Well, this is like premium glass, but you can literally pick these up for nothing. Sometimes people give them away. That's what's so awesome about Pentax. I can go and get all of these beautiful manual lenses, which is kind of what you want in when you're doing cinema anyway. This one even came with a hood, which is really nice. And then I've got all these beautiful filming lenses, which, is perfect. Because, I like doing a lot of video nowadays. Oh, I should show you this really good one that I got. It's massive. Let me just reach over here. I don't use this one too often because it's heavy as sin. This is a Soliger lens, so it's a third-party lens, but it was made for a Pentax screw mount. This is a 70-200, which is a really classy sort of photographer lens that a lot of people use. This one's only a 3.5. A lot of the modern ones are 2.8, but that really doesn't matter. And unfortunately, it was made before a lot of the modern coatings were out, so it doesn't give the best image. There's a lot of aberration in it, and I've actually got a 2x converter on it, which actually sort of doubles the aperture. So it's giving a more like an f6. I guess it would be like f8. So it's for bright conditions only, unfortunately. But man, like I paid $20 for this at the secondhand store. People didn't even know what this was. I looked at it 2 seconds and I was like, "Holy crap! That was probably a $400 lens back in 1960." And there's no way in heck I was passing that sale up. I bought that years ago, and I've used it so many times. I haven't really tried it out much with the 2x converter on it, but I'm looking forward to that someday. I get out and can use that long of a lens. Anyway, moving on past screw mounts, past film lenses, into my next little camera. This guy, I purchased as kind of a backup camera. This is a KS1. It's about the same size as the mirrorless camera, but it's actually a full SLR. Now, what does SLR mean? Basically, SLR means single lens reflex. Well, what does that mean? Well, inside of the lens, there's a mirror. I'll show you. And when you look through the viewfinder, what you're actually seeing is this mirror, and that's what you're focusing on. And when you take a photo, the mirror flips up and the shutter opens in behind it. And the reason why they call it a single lens reflex is because they used to have a camera called a twin lens reflex, which had two lenses on it. One had the shutter, the other one you had to focus through. So there was this little gap of, where you were off just slightly. And they were really nice, and they made a lot of those, and I've got a few of them myself. But, they didn't give you an accurate crop from what you were seeing through the focusing lens on the top and the other one. So at some point, some really smart engineer decided, hey, well, if we just put a mirror down there and have it flip up and then the shutter in behind it, we can just make, one lens, and then you get an accurate crop of what you're seeing in front of you instead of like something that's slightly off this way, right? So that's basically what they did. Now this is a really cool camera. So what? I'm gonna turn it off here a second. When you turn it on, try to angle it here. These little LEDs flash on it. This has got a little light on the top of it too. My overhead light's really bright. I'm sorry, this isn't really coming through very well. But it was a flashy little camera, and the whole idea was to make like the most compact SLR on the market. And for a backup, it's great. Like, I couldn't ask for anything, more compact. The only other thing that kind of sucks about this one though is whereas the other cameras in the Pentax line are mostly weather sealed, this one is not. They took the weather sealing out to help with the compactness of the body, unfortunately. And this lens I have on here, it is a bayonet, is a modern lens. This lens is the most expensive lens I've ever bought. It took me like a year to pay it off. It's just a 40 millimeter pancake lens, as they call it. So it's super compact. And yeah, that's really the draw behind it. There's not a lot to it. So there's less glass in it. You get less to focus through, more sharp pictures, basically. It's the whole idea. And, it's only like an f2.8, but it's still a pretty bright lens. They have a lot of these lenses they call limited. They only make so many of them a year. That's, they're more expensive. They have better glass in them. All that kind of thing. It's fun. There's so many that I want, but I wanted something really unique to put on this thing and make it even more compact. So this is a good tow around camera. In fact, the store I'm working at has got a bunch of them right now because we got them on special from Pentax because they were clearing out their warehouse. So we've got them on for a really good price. I bought this like over a year ago, and I've used it for shoots and stuff too because it had, a better sensor than my Nikon at the time, which is my more professional camera. But anyway, let's move on. Now here's something really different. So this was Pentax's other mirrorless line. You see, this thing's super, super tiny. This is the QS1. Came out around the same time, 2013. It is interchangeable lens, and you can see the sensor right there. But it's got a tiny ass sensor in it, and tiny ass lenses, which are a different mount. So this is what a lot of the mirrorless cameras were before. They had the K01 that I showed earlier, where that one took full lenses. They all had these weird little lens systems. Now, you can't really find a lot of these lenses anymore, but they weren't overly expensive to begin with. I bought this as sort of like I wanted to test it out. I got a really good deal on it. Like I said, they were clearing out some warehouse items. So I wanted to try it out just for fun. Just to see what it was all about. I didn't think from the pictures and stuff that I saw, it didn't look this small. But I guess that's what it is. So this is a kind of a fun walk around camera because it's so tiny and compact. It weighs almost nothing, but it does take really nice pictures. That's one thing I was very impressed about it. So I was going around the town the other day, just snapping pictures of buildings and stuff like that, and I was amazed how easy it was to, carry this around in a little shoulder bag and not really have to worry about it. There's no weight to it. Unlike the next one that I have. Now this is my recent acquisition. And it's replacing my Nikon camera because it's slightly newer in that one. this is this is a K3. This was their professional line of camera back in 2014. But hey, again, I got it on a great discount, so I couldn't say no because this just happens to be the silver edition body, which is, I don't know. I guess they only made so many of them, so I thought that was kind of cool. And it came with the battery grip at the bottom, which is a really nice feature if you want to get into like more professional shooting. The lens that I have on it is actually not a Pentax lens; it's a Sigma lens. It's a 50 millimeter f1.4. It should be the most expensive lens that I've ever bought, but it wasn't because Sigma was getting rid of their Pentax lenses, which is really beneficial to me. So this beautiful $600 lens I got for like a steal. I won't say how much, but it was not that much. So I couldn't say no to that, and I bought it last year. It's one of the best lenses I've ever owned. It's a beautiful cinema lens too, f1.4. I use it in a lot of my reviews. Unfortunately, because it's 50 mil, this is a crop sensor. This is a full frame lens. There's a crop effect. It's more like an 80 mil. So in the space that I have here, as you can see, it's really small, and I'm aiming down at my desk like this. It get really close to the books, unfortunately, with the comic books. So that's why I'm switching back to the 28, so I can have a wider angle of view and not have to get so close with it from now on. But I really do love this lens. This is more of a portrait taking lens than anything else. And might I say, this camera is just gorgeous. I've only had the opportunity to maybe like go out and shoot with it a couple of times, but I've never owned a camera with a grip on it like this. And you would think, oh, well, what does that matter? Well, it matters when you're shooting and you want to go into portrait mode. Well, all of a sudden you've got this secondary grip with a shutter. Oh, well, that's interesting, eh? Now, when I want to shoot portrait mode, which is what you call vertical sometimes, all I have to do is a quick flip to go from horizontal to vertical. And what I like about this one, if I can show the back here, is when I flip it, the information screen flips with it. I had a Nikon camera that I tested that out on the other day. Didn't do it. I know it's just a simple little thing, but it does make a difference. Anyway, so this would be a really fun camera to try out during a shoot. It is heavy as sin. It weighs a ton, especially with the grip on it. And the lens. The lens is ultra heavy. But, man, it's going to be fun to shoot with. Now, what I'd like to do is christen this on shooting another Niobe cosplay shoot, which is my plan once Larry Higgins, creator of Niobe and writer, his new model comes up, I think next month, and it would be really fun to take this out and shoot with it. Doing that, because I think that's a nice way to christen it. So what is the that's basically what a battery grip does. And it can also, you've got you load your battery in down here instead of underneath the camera, but I believe you can actually put a second battery inside the camera too and get double your battery life out of it, which is pretty nice. Another thing you can do, it came with an adapter so that you could use AA batteries. And you're kind of thinking, oh, well, that's stupid. Why would you want to use AA batteries when you got a rechargeable battery? Well, let's say you're in the cold weather. I don't know if you've ever noticed or not, but when you're in cold weather, AA batteries don't function very well. They lose power, or sorry, not AA batteries. Rechargeable batteries don't function very well. They lose power really quickly. They get cold, they start losing power. If you've ever noticed this, if you're out in the winter with your phone and suddenly your phone battery starts dying for no reason at all, well, that solves that problem. AA batteries don't have the same cold issues that rechargeable batteries do. So that's one reason. The other reason is availability. If you're traveling, it's a lot easier to find AA batteries than it is to find a place to recharge your battery. It takes something like 6 or 8 AA batteries to match the rechargeable, but it's an option. It's a nice option. That's for sure. Okay. One more thing to show. Now, this one, oop, this one says Ricoh on it, but Ricoh and Pentax are the same company. They merged. I don't know. It was years ago. They've always been Ricoh Pentax since I've been working with cameras in a store. When that was 7 years ago, so it's at least been that long. This is my action camera made by Ricoh Pentax. Now, what Pentax, Ricoh, whatever you want to call it, will do is they'll put Ricoh on the small cameras like this, the point and shoots and things like that, and Pentax on the larger cameras, because Pentax is more like a brand designation within the Ricoh company now, I guess. So Ricoh always did make digital cameras, but when they merged, they kind of said, okay, all the point and shoot stuff, that's Ricoh. All the SLR and mirrorless stuff, that's Pentax. Fair enough, right? But even, let me just pull this up here for a second. They say Ricoh and Pentax on them now, but maybe it's just on the boxes. I'm not sure. We'll see. Oh yeah, there we go. See, this one says Ricoh on the back, but very clearly says Pentax on the front. This thing. So this is essentially a GoPro, but with a much sturdier build, all internalized, no case or anything like that, and a screen. So you can use it like a digital camera, but it's got a super wide angle lens on it. So it's not really good for just like a straight digital camera. It's more for video. And I use this thing every now and then just for the fun of it. Attached in my car or whatever. It's got a really nice gasket on it to weather seal the interior. Everything's enclosed. It's got a double lock. I've dipped it right underwater, no problems. This was a great thing. These were called a WG1, and then they made a WG2, which was even more smaller than this, and 4K. Neither of these caught on, unfortunately. I still, to this day, have a WG2 sitting at work. It's like 3 years old. Can't sell the damn thing worth a damn, even though I'm selling it below cost. Kind of sucks. This one I got on sale because every now and then they clear out them old product. It is a fantastic action camera if you're into action cameras or need one. These are probably some of the best made on the market, and they're better than most modern day GoPros, even though they don't have the 4K thing. 4K is not all that it's cracked up to be, especially when you're dealing with small sensors like these things have in them. And upscaling the 4K, it doesn't look that much better than 1080p, honestly. The actual like dimensions of the video are bigger, but the quality isn't that much better. So that's just a little rundown of some of the Pentax stuff I own and why I like it. I mean, one last thing. Just in case you don't believe me with that little demonstration, let's take, I'll just pop the hood off here for a second. Let's take off this Sigma lens. And so here's the regular K mount on the K3. Let's take this one. Oh, caught up on straps here. Let's take off this 40 to 80 off this film camera. And pop it on here. Line up the red marks. Click in. You got a film lens on your modern camera. Pop it on. And I gotta, well, sorry. I keep putting it up near my face and the thing keeps turning off. Anyway, I pop it on and I can zoom, focus, a little too close. Focus, and I can, let's see, let's up the shutter speed here a bit because I'm aiming at a screen. Oh my goodness. And you take a picture. Aren't you working? Live. Oh, this is funny. Okay. Oh, I see what's going on. It's trying to bypass the thing. Anyway. Oh my dear God. The screen keeps turning on. What am I activating here? Sensor? Yeah, it must be. Anyway, there's a picture I just took. It works. Anyway. This thing's being... There's a little visual sensor on here that turns the screen off when you put it up near your eye, and I keep activating it somehow. Anyway, I must play around with that feature and turn it off a bit. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool that you can take any Pentax lens ever made, including some of the third-party ones, pop them onto any Pentax camera, and use it just like any modern lens. Of course, you're going to run into problems. There are certain, focusing issues that you run into sometimes, things like that. But, nothing will work better than a modern lens on it, right? Yeah. Ugh. Got something turned on there. Anyway, but modern lenses are always good to have around instead of the other ones. Oh God, that's a terrible photo. That's what happens when you, try to take a picture of a screen with crazy lighting going on. But anyway, so yeah, that's my little rundown of Pentax stuff and why I like it and why it's the most versatile system out there. Colors are fantastic on Pentax cameras. They emulate sort of a more natural tone. They emulate a lot of film look, which you might be thinking, film, those look bad. No. Properly shot film is some of the best color and best exposure in the entire, realm of photography. Film, not to get on a tangent here, was masterfully perfected over 100 years, and if shot properly, looks better than digital even today in some cases. Now, digital sort of surpassed film at this point because of the color depth that you can get from the newer digital cameras, and you can really get into those shadows and highlights and bring them out and that kind of thing. But that's not here nor there. This is, nerd talk in photography. But anyway, so there we have it. I freaking love Pentax cameras, and I think everybody should look into Pentax cameras if they're going to buy a digital camera, and they might be pleasantly surprised with some of the features. Uh, things that Pentax cameras don't, or things that Pentax cameras do that other cameras don't. Shake reduction is built into the body, not into the lens. So all the lenses don't have that extra motor and everything inside of them. So the lenses tend to be a little cheaper. Sometimes, unless you get into the limited lenses and stuff like that. What else? They have timers built into them, which means you can do time lapse photography right out of the box with most of the Pentax cameras. And they have most of the time astro tracking technology built into them with the time lapse, so that if you really want to, you can hook it up to a telescope or point it at the night sky and do long exposures at night. They're really good at long exposures, outdoor stuff, natural looking color, film simulation, all of those types of things. Not to say that the other cameras aren't that good. Like Nikon and Canon make really nice photos. Fuji's actually really good if you want to get into the mirrorless. Fujifilm at film simulation, and they have some pretty nice little mirrorless cameras out there on the market. But I still like the Pentax stuff better for its versatility. The Fuji stuff tends to be a bit expensive. The lenses are expensive. I can still get the 20-year-old, 40-year-old, 60-year-old Nikon lens and pop it on my modern camera, and it still works. That's some pretty good value. But anyway, that's enough for me tonight. I just wanted to get on here and ramble. I don't think anybody, really popped in and watched. But hey, it'll be there if anybody does want to watch it. Just a little bit of fun. Anyway, I will talk to you guys later, and maybe next time it'll be about comic books. Who knows? Maybe. Okay. See you all later. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you wish, all those nice things. And I will see you later.